The Rachel Hollis podcast is proudly sponsored by Amica Insurance. As Amica says, empathy is our best policy. That's why they'll go above and beyond to tailor your insurance coverage to best fit your needs. Whether you're on the road, at home, or traveling along life's journey, their friendly and knowledgeable representatives will work with you to ensure that you have the right coverage in place. Amica will provide you with peace of mind. Go to amica.com to get a quote today. It's time to play ball. My son has been working with his baseball team since the fall, and we are officially in baseball season. So if you're a mama like me and you got to stock up on all the sporting gear, now is the time. Academy Sports and Outdoors has the gear that you need, and you can bring it home for less. Gear up for baseball, softball, and t-ball with essentials from Easton, Rawlings, and Wilson at Academy. Academy offers free 1-hour in-store or curbside pickup if you're like me and you forgot to get the equipment in time. Swing by your local store or shopacademy.com today and get ready to hit it out of the park.
You're always going to be in the gap. Like, you're always going to feel like a failure. And this is why often high achievers are depressed or they are unhappy, is because they're always measuring themselves against the next ideal, which is that moving target. And then they're always devaluing everything that they've done. They're never feeling good. They never feel successful.
Hey guys, it's Rach. Welcome to the show. I'm so glad that you're here with us today. And I have a favor, which sounds kind of harsh if we just met, but I'm assuming that most of you have been a part of this community for a hot minute. And so I gotta ask, are you subscribed to the podcast? Subscribing to the podcast you listen to regularly is one of the best things that you can do for hosts like me. It helps to support the show and the staff that works on it. It ensures that you never miss an episode when we drop a new one. And here's the cool thing about subscribing. If you do it and then you hate this show, just unsubscribe. It's one click away. In the meantime, if you're listening, we would so appreciate it if you would just tap that button and make it official. Hi guys, welcome back to the show and welcome back to a new conversation in our Mastermind series. If you've never listened to one of these before, these are where I gather the best of the best, the experts, the authors, the teachers, the thought leaders that I have interviewed over the last 8+ years of doing the show, and we pick a single topic and share 10 minutes from each expert. Today, we're talking about how you go from hustle to flow. This is rethinking productivity and success so you can work smarter, not harder. In Mastermind episodes, we gather some of the best conversations we've ever had on the subject. So first up, we're going to hear from Case Kenny. He dives into mindfulness and modern success, how being present and intentional can lead us to better results. Next, it's Michael Easter, who challenges us to embrace discomfort. Struggle is actually a key to peak performance and long-term growth. Then Ben Hardy is sharing powerful high-performance habits and how to shift your mindset. Finally, Greg McKeown, author of Essentialism, teaches us how to achieve effortless productivity by cutting down the noise and focusing on what truly matters. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by hustle culture, this conversation is for you.
It would really be unfortunate 20 years from now to look back and realize that I was going along this path, dating these kinds of people because I thought this was the right thing, working this job because I thought it would lead me to some definition of happiness or success, doing all these things, having these aspirations, having unchecked anxieties, emotions, whatever it is. And it would really be unfortunate if I were to look back and realize I never challenged any of these things. I'm pretty type A. So my solution was to start the podcast. So it's a very meta thing in that what I do now was as I saw the kind of the solution or the challenge for myself.
Totally.
Started the podcast and kind of the rest is history because basically what I realized I was doing on the podcast was my own form of mindfulness. Mm-hmm. And that was basically 5 years ago, coming up on in June. An always on switch of being inspired. So I've got Google Docs of just things that I've noticed over time that I just write down, prompts that I could turn to whenever. So I'm always marinating on ideas. But I mean, it's basically just the day before that I publish it, I'll pull out one of the prompts or react to a TikTok or react to something or a question that's on my mind. And then I put on music. I listen to energetic, upbeat house music, 126 beats per minute. Like that's my thing that gets me in the headspace. And then I'll write a very, very detailed outline. I think of more of a writer first, podcaster second, very closely related. I'll just sit down. It takes me about 2 hours to write, and that's it. And then I'll go and record it. I think we've all been given gifts in life, and sometimes they're not, as explicit as, being a math genius or whatever it may be. I think mine has always been just simplifying emotions for myself. So if I can give myself a prompt of, what is a soulmate, or what is love, or what are anxious thoughts means, or whatever, I can sit down and say, well, here's the experiences that I've had. Here's what it's taught me. And it just kind of word vomits out.
Yeah.
I think a lot about like the topic of manifestation, for instance. And a lot of people are like, oh man, manifesting is being clear on what you want, clarity around it. And then eventually the world, the universe just comes and supports it. And like, I love optimism and I love clarity around your intention. But the way that I define manifestation is giving the universe. And when I say the universe, I mean people, I mean friends, I mean industry people, giving the universe more to react to.
Right.
And when you actually do the thing and you write the book or you do the podcast, you're giving it more to react to. And like, I used to think that was so cheesy, like, but like crazy things really do happen once you actually start doing the thing and not just hoping that other people will eventually come around and recognize it because you have the intention. I think we confuse like clarity and intention and honesty with action. To get what you want, you have to bring those stories closer together. I think about like life and happiness very logically. Like you can't be living your life. I do a fair amount of dating content. So for instance, you can't be living in your inner life saying, for instance, most of my audience is female. So like all men are liars, all men are cheaters, no man will love me. That's what you're telling yourself. But then on your vision board, for instance, be like, this is the kind of man I want. Like we have to bring those two stories closer together. And it takes a lot of self-control, particularly if you've been through scenarios where you've been disappointed by every man you've dated and you're beat over the head in social media about all the stories and so on and so forth. But I've found bringing those stories together is what helps you spot the right partner. Don't think of a yellow car. You spot a yellow car. Like you start bringing those stories closer together, what you tell yourself inside and then the reality that you want to live. Like that is how, as foo-foo as that sounds, that is how you create what you want. But when they're not the same, I've just found that to be very illogical, and the universe does not respond well to lack of logic, and your actions don't follow. If you're telling yourself one thing but you want another, it's just very confusing, and then it's no wonder you make maybe poor decisions in dating. But bringing those stories closer together is everything. We start off like, well, I deserve this, that, and the other. And then life does this thing. And all of a sudden you're like, well, I don't even know anymore. Like, I think I want this, but I've never gotten it. Who knows? I think, and everyone would agree that a relationship is built on reciprocity. Like what you give is what you should receive in some form on the ultimate timeline. So like, I always encourage people to go back to like, you're looking for these things in a partner. You want honesty, compassion, time commitment, all these very practical things. Like, are you giving them in the first place, for one? That is the ultimate line of logic there that says, okay, if you're giving it, then you deserve it in return. Like that is the connection point. And then when it comes to like ideas of standards, I think standards are one of those things where I think social media has really made people overthink standards. For one, everyone has an opinion on a standard. Practical standards from who should initiate, for like all these things. We're very confused. So I spend a lot of time thinking about like what makes a standard yours versus someone else's, because we all need different things. And what I've come back to is the idea of like standards 1.0 versus standards 2.0. Standards 1.0 is the idea of like, at a certain point, you've got a list of standards, but they're likely borrowed from other people. And that's fine. Like you got to start somewhere, be inspired. Standards 2.0 are the ones that come from your life, likely in instances where you experience the direct opposite of those standards. So if you say, I want honesty, that becomes a real, unbreakable, true to you standard because unfortunately you probably dated someone who lied to you. And it's those experiences, the contrast, that makes it really real. So I really encourage people to go through their memory bank. And that really is what mindfulness is to me. It's re-examining your memories and extracting from it standards, boundaries, more compassionate conclusions from it because you have those experiences, some of which are painful.
Yeah.
But that's how you create those things in the present that aren't borrowed, that won't deteriorate when you get confused or when things are up and down, but you have those life experiences. So like, I think that's a powerful place to operate from, because otherwise there's just a lot of noise in dating and everything of this is right, this is wrong. Everyone has an opinion on something. And really the only way to come to your own is through your memories, through your experiences of what you've lived through, some of which aren't great, but like that creates the greatest boundaries and standards for yourself moving forward. Yeah, I've been really big lately on the idea of slowness and stillness. I have this weird relationship with this number, 216 p.m. It's one of those numbers that's always followed me in life. It was like my carpool number when I was young, and I see it everywhere. Like we all see certain numbers. I see 216, page on a book, time on a clock. And for years, I've set a reminder on my phone at 216 to just stop and do nothing, literally do nothing. And I created this thing called the 216 Social Club to help people do the same. We all, at 216, we all just, whatever time zone we're in, we just take a moment of stillness, of doing nothing. And as small of a thing as that is, I found it to be so powerful. Spiritually, of course, of slowing down, not rushing, but also like there's a lot of science behind what happens when your brain does nothing. Like being bored is a great thing.
So good.
You're forming associations in your brain, and association is how you make sense of life. It's how you reaffirm standards, boundaries, all these things. So like, the reason I bring it up is being 35 now, I just think of like my 20s and early 30s, never slowing down, always moving, finish lines, borrowing timelines, just like a million miles an hour, because I would guilt myself into not doing enough, not being enough, all these things, all the classics. But just even a minute of stillness every day just reminds you that you can be still, and good things come from being still, and clarity comes from stillness. So it's a word that I'm a fan of lately.
Yeah.
I don't think fear should be the primary motivation in life, but I fear regret, because regret's one of those things that you can't change. You can't change it. And that scares me. Similar to what we talked about in the beginning, that's why I started the podcast, because I was like, I don't want to look back in 20 years and realize that I just kept blindly stumbling along a career path, or blindly dating the same people, or blindly saying this is what a single guy is like.
Yeah.
So yeah, that scares me. And that's why like I'm big on challenging yourself in uncomfortable ways through slowing down, because I think rushing is almost guaranteed at some point to lead you to some kind of regret.
Yeah.
So yeah, my girlfriend makes fun of me because I have this thing. I'm like, we have to do the difficult things. Like I think what you just described is a mix between emotional intelligence and maturity. The ability to sit in discomfort emotionally, and the ability to make the difficult choices, where there's an easier choice. There's a numbing choice. There's a distracting choice. That's the easy one. Or the difficult one, to sit in a feeling, to have a conversation, to do whatever it is. Like, that is how I've really come to define my life. It's like I have to do the difficult thing. If there's a difficult thing on the menu, not because I'm some like Navy SEAL hardo, but because I've realized that good things come from the difficult moments. And I did an episode recently on like, for women, what is the most masculine trait you could look for in a man? For women that want a masculine man. And I said, we got to stop thinking about masculinity as masculinity. We should look for maturity, because maturity is doing the difficult things. And what more masculine trait is there than doing the difficult things physically and emotionally? Like that is the trait that I think we should aspire to in ourselves and in partners. It's willingness to sit in those things rather than run from it, a willingness to have difficult conversation, even if it leads to an outcome that isn't so great. It's the willingness to do it, I think, it's emotional intelligence wrapped up into action and everything in between. And I'm very passionate about it. It's like, I'm like my girlfriend, I'm like almost like a glutton for punishment. It's like there's a difficult thing on the table, like I have to do it, because if I don't, then I know it's just further rooting you down a path where you're going to regret something. And I think inaction just makes me so uncomfortable. And granted, it's made me like a little impatient and like do things maybe too quickly. But I think looking at yourself through that lens of like sitting in the discomfort, doing the difficult thing, I think it will always lead you to a point of clarity that is compassionate and rewarding in some sense.
This episode is brought to you by Saks Fifth Avenue. It's spring, or I guess I should say it's almost spring. But the second the weather starts turning and getting even slightly warm, I start looking for spring style. I think it goes back to when I was a little girl and I used to get an Easter dress. There's something about this time of year that makes me want to look for long, flowy maxi dresses and fun date night outfits, and maybe even something to spruce up my wardrobe for work. At Saks, you can find instant inspiration for whatever is on your list. Curate a brand new closet refresh or just get 1 or 2 great pieces to upgrade your overall look. If you're looking for shopping to be fun, easy, and stylish, then head to Saks for inspiring ways to upgrade your personal style. Shop Saks.com. I have the New Balance 1080s in 2 different colors. I've got the sort of minty green moment and I've got the white moment because, you need it for the outfit. The New Balance 1080 is the ultimate daily trainer, combining reliable comfort with top-tier performance. Whether you're logging miles or running errands, the 1080 seamlessly transitions from the coffee shop to the grocery store, offering versatility from everything from everyday to race day. The New Balance 1080 midsoles offer cushion support, and I mean it, you guys. It's like bouncing on top of a cloud. Featuring a lightweight and breathable mesh upper, the New Balance 1080 keeps your feet cool and fresh throughout every run. Shop the 1080 at newbalance.com.
The research suggests that in the past, we moved about 14 times more than we do today.
Wow.
So the average person was walking, anywhere from, 7 to 13 miles a day on average. Today, the average person takes about 4,000 steps, which is about 2 miles. But then the other thing you have to factor in is okay, not only are you covering a lot of ground in the past, but it's rougher. There's more ups and downs. And oh, by the way, you're probably carrying stuff. And when you decide to rest, it's like you rested. You're in the dirt, so you might be squatting. You're doing all these things all day that are more physically challenging. And I do think that hunger is the best sauce. And we tend to be more hungry after we've done some physical work. So another part of the book that the comfort crisis I look at is how hunger has changed. 80% of eating is now driven by reasons other than true physiological hunger. So we eat because it's it's this time that I normally eat. Oh, I'm bored. What should I do? I've swiped through Instagram for 30 minutes. I guess I'll just have a sandwich. So I think the story of improving your life today is that you often have to go through short-term discomfort to get a long-term benefit. And I think we have a lot of ways if we're feeling discomfort to deal with it, internal discomfort. Food is one of them. So a lot of people will stress eat, right? Instead of going, okay, well, why am I stressed out? What can I do to, what is this stress telling me I need to do?
Yeah.
It's like a signal, right? Change something. But you can fix it in the short term if you, snack on some M&Ms, or you pull out your phone and you binge Twitter or whatever it is, or insert all these other behaviors that we overdo. It's just that when you make that choice too often, you tend to see that in the context of today, it leads to problems.
Yeah.
Right? If you eat every time, whatever the hell you want, anytime you want, we know that's going to lead to problems.
Yeah.
If every single time you feel a twinge of boredom, you're let me go on Twitter or Instagram, okay, that's a pretty good recipe to start to feel like a crazy person in your head, right? And be stressed out. If every time you get the notion to exercise and you put one foot in front of the other and go, oh, well, this is actually not that comfortable. I think I'll just sit down.
Yeah.
It's these drives that we have, they made sense in the past. They don't always anymore. And so you start to see problems pile up. And to your sort of question about why do we do these things too is, so I live in Las Vegas, right? And Las Vegas is a town that is designed to basically take people out of moderation, right? So everyone knows everything is fine in moderation. Then the question is okay, well, why the hell can't humans moderate? Why do we suck so bad at it? Now, in Las Vegas, there are slot machines everywhere. People may not realize this, but there's obviously slot machines in casinos, but they're in grocery stores, gas stations, bars. Airport.
Yeah. Everywhere.
You walk off the jetway and it's you're in a casino. And people play these things all the time. So I'm a journalist, and when I make an observation that doesn't seem to make sense, I want to figure out why. Because everyone knows that you're never going to win the longer you play a slot machine.
Right.
The house always wins.
Always.
Las Vegas was not built on winners.
Yes.
So that's what I want to figure out. Why do people get hooked on slot machines, basically? So long story short is this question by way of talking to this person who tells me to talk to this person who tells me to talk to this, one of those, right? I end up at this casino on the edge of town in Las Vegas. But the catch is it's not an sort of open, like anyone can come into this casino. It's a casino laboratory. So it's the casino industry and a handful of other big tech companies. They built a real life, working, breathing, fully functional casino, but it's used entirely for human behavior research. So they're looking at how all these different things that happen in casinos get people to make decisions later on. While I'm there, I meet a guy who designs slot machines. And if you want to understand why people get hooked on slot machines, you have to understand this 3-part behavior loop that I call the scarcity loop. And it's in my book I just came out with called Scarcity Brain. So it's got 3 parts. It's got opportunity, unpredictable rewards, and quick repeatability.
Okay,
so,
opportunity, unpredictable rewards, and repeatability.
Yep,
okay.
Quick repeatability.
Quick repeatability.
Quick becomes important because you just talked about velocity. So we'll bring it back. So you have an opportunity to get something of value. In the case of a slot machine, it's obviously money, right? Unpredictable rewards. You know you'll get the thing of value at some point if you repeat the behavior. But you don't know when, and you don't know how valuable it's going to be.
God, okay.
So now with slot machines, it's like as those reels roll, you could either lose the dollar you bet, you could win $2, you could win $2 million. So there's this crazy range of outcomes that could happen. And then 3, quick repeatability. The reels fall, you just do it again.
Yeah.
You can do it immediately again. Now, the reason that, to your point, it's not just casino companies who have built this casino is because you can put this system in a lot of other things and capture people's attention and drive behaviors with it. So,
oh my God, I'm so sorry I interrupt you, but I just had an epiphany.
Yeah. Now, people will criticize the hell out of gambling and slot machine gambling, but it's a heavily regulated industry. So casino companies know, like, if we just did this, this, and this, we could increase our gaming revenue and time. They use time on device, which happens to be like the exact same language that big tech uses. We can increase our time on device. But the thing is it's all very heavily regulated by the government. Like each state has gaming boards and all this stuff. With tech companies and all these other companies using this loop, like it's not regulated.
Right.
Like no one's going, oh, well, you can't do that to increase, time on device or whatever it might be. So random rewards, those unpredictable rewards, they capture human behavior and behavior of all different creatures, like pigeons, rats, basically every creature we've studied it in, better than anything. So it's in social media. It's also being put into financial apps like Robinhood. It's what explains a lot of the rise of sports betting. It's in dating apps, right? Swipe, swipe, swipe. Oh, I got a match. Is that super handsome, seemingly wealthy man? Or is it that one where I'm like, he's kind of dorky, looks a little bit poor, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Right? All these different places right now. And there's really nothing better at being the serial killer of moderation, taking us out of moderation. So when you look at what people generally crave, it all tends to be things that would have kept us alive in the past. Right? So food, stuff, information, connection / influence / status. So social media plays on our drive to influence other people, to be socially connected. Now, these are all things that made sense, kept us alive, right? Let's say I'm the person who I'm able to influence other people in our tribe. So humans probably evolved in groups of people that didn't have more than 150 people. It was clear, like, where you were in the pecking order, kind of, right? But you also knew the people around you, and you could only do so much. But at the same time, if you had more status, it probably gave you a survival advantage. So you probably got out of menial, crappy labor, right? You probably got more food, probably had all these other things. But today, this drive we have to sort of influence others, connect with people, also have a level of status. It gets put on this application that also quantifies it, right? There's a hard metric behind it.
Right.
So when Facebook started putting the number of likes that you have, it just took off. That feature took off, and this was years ago. And this is totally different than how we lived in the past, right? There was only so many people we could influence, for one. We didn't have like a hard metric of, okay, you have, 100 friends and you have 50 friends. So the 100 friend person is going,
yeah, I have more
got
value.
you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I don't think that's necessarily good. Now, some people, a lot of people can put this in context and it's fine. They're like, oh yeah, this is not the real world. But not everyone can do that. And to your point about kids, I think that when you look at how the human brain changes when we're going through about puberty to about age 25. So a handful of things are happening that make social media maybe more dangerous than other times in our life. One is that we really, really crave social connection. And it becomes way more important for us than at any other time in our life. And like you sort of rise and fall with how you feel you're socially connected. And so when you put that on an application and you can see those hard metrics, that tends to not be great for teenagers. And at the same time, like I know that there are various goals of business. Like on one hand, you need to make enough money to, figure out how much you need to make for whatever lifestyle you want to live, but also you probably want to positively impact people. Well, that's harder to measure.
Yeah.
There's all these other things you want to do too, but I feel like that when you can put a number on something, whether it's, a salary or whether it's an amount of followers, it gives you the illusion that you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And especially because a lot of times those things are socially validated, and they're socially validated because they're easy to compare. The salary is a good one too that we can often get captured by. It's like, why do you want to make money in the first place?
Yes.
Well, probably to be happy. Well, at a certain point, trying to get that number to go up more is probably going to decrease your happiness. Therefore, it's doing the opposite of what you want it to do. So it's almost like life is not a very clear thing, right? There's all these different things that are competing all the time. And it's almost like a giant soundboard where when you move one knob up, it's going to distort the sound a little bit. So then you're going to have to counter with this one, but then this one's going to go down. And it's constantly just messing with the dials, and they're never going to be perfect. Because if it's like a live concert, it's like, well, we're playing another song in like 5 minutes, dude. And those levels aren't going to work perfect for that one. So kind of trying to be aware and also being okay with like things are going to be ambiguous sometime. And I have to learn to be okay with that. And so, the way I look at it in the book is like really unpacking why do we get fixed on numbers in the first place? And then what can we do to sort of begin to get out of that cycle?
Visiting South Dakota was always one of my someday things. Like, well, someday I'm going to go see the Dakotas, and someday I'm going to walk through Badlands National Park, and someday I'm going to see Mount Rushmore in person. And then a couple summers ago, I just made someday today, and it was awesome. The kids and I had the most amazing time. We went hiking. We saw Mount Rushmore, which is like shockingly more majestic than you think it would be. We had amazing dinners. We stayed in this awesome log cabin in a national park. It was truly one of our favorite family vacations. And I loved it because it was this great blend of seeing a part of the U.S. I'd never seen before and being outside in nature. So maybe it's time you turn someday into today. See why there's so much South Dakota and so little time. Plan your escape at travelsouthdakota.com. This episode is brought to you by Saks Fifth Avenue. It's spring, or I guess I should say it's almost spring. But the second the weather starts turning and getting even slightly warm, I start looking for spring style. I think it goes back to when I was a little girl and I used to get an Easter dress. There's something about this time of year that makes me want to look for long, flowy maxi dresses and fun date night outfits, and maybe even something to spruce up my wardrobe for work. At Saks, you can find instant inspiration for whatever is on your list. Curate a brand new closet refresh or just get one or two great pieces to upgrade your overall look. If you're looking for shopping to be fun, easy, and stylish, then head to Saks for inspiring ways to upgrade your personal style. Shop Saks.com.
A little bit.
The field of psychology and even neuroscience has really shifted in this direction. So for a really long time, the whole field of psychology was really obsessed with the past. If you think about like Freud, it's like sit on the couch, let's talk about your past, let's work through the trauma, let's hear your story. And most psychologists and even most psychological theories for a really long time thought that human beings were basically the byproduct of their own past, which is, there's still a lot of truth to that. But what modern research is showing is that human beings actually spend way more time thinking about the future than the past. We actually think about our own future at least 2 to 3 times, probably 2 to 5 times more than we think about our past. We're regularly thinking about the future. That's actually called prospection. We're always thinking about our future and kind of where we're wanting it to go, and then ultimately we get committed to that future. And so, like one important thing, and then we can kind of talk about ultimately how he got all committed to that and ultimately shifted himself and started being his future self, which is really how he got there, was just that prospection is based on an idea that everything we do as a human being is driven by a goal. So like if someone is listening to this conversation, it's because even if reactively they had the goal to listen to it, they maybe came across their newsfeed, but they decided, okay, I want to turn this on. You and I, at some point, had the goal of getting this conversation together, which is how I ended up here in Texas.
Yeah.
And so everything we do is driven by a goal, even just me getting up and going to the fridge or me picking this thing up. And so we're all driven by a future, but a big challenge is that most people's futures are very short term. It's like get to the end of the day, get the kids to school, get the groceries, get the bills paid. It's just kind of like an urgent future that's coming at you like a fire hose. And so there's one of my favorite quotes is from Robert Greene and 50 Cent. And I think I put it literally twice in the book. But it's, basically the idea is that by our nature as rational, conscious creatures, we cannot help but think of the future. But most people out of fear limit their views of the future to a narrow range. Thoughts of tomorrow, a few weeks ahead, perhaps a vague plan for the months to come. We're generally dealing with so many immediate battles that it is hard for us to lift our gaze above the moment. It is a law of power, however, that the further and deeper we contemplate the future, the greater our capacity to shape it. Mm-hmm. And so what I like about his story was he started really at 17 contemplating a very big future self. He's talking to his future self 5 years into the future. It's a really big future self. I mean, to have 1 million subscribers from where he was at, like if you look at him, he was really bad at what he was doing. He was unrefined. He didn't have the skills. He was making very bad videos. But that's where his future self was, and that was the vision that was driving everything he was doing, therefore driving who he was becoming, the skills he was developing. And so I just thought, obviously he got very committed to that. And then one thing that was really interesting was if you actually go back to his videos, you actually do see a tangible difference after October of 2015, which is when he filmed those videos. You can tell he got more committed. He started being more bold. He started kind of playing at that higher level and failing at that higher level so that it started to produce better outcomes very quickly. And so within a year, he went from maybe I think he said 8,000 subscribers. Now a year later, he's got 300,000 or 400,000, and he's just growing much faster, much more exponentially. So he obviously got really committed to that. Prospection means that as people, we're literally being pulled forward by the future that we're most committed to. But if you observe how most people's behavior is, most people are committed to very short-term goals, meaning it's kind of like a hamster wheel. It's kind of repetitious every week, get to work, pay the bills, get the groceries, get the gas in the car. Those are all goals. If my car is low in gas, I got to go fill it up. Therefore, that's going to drive my behavior to get to the gas station and fill it up. And so basically, in other words, our identity is driven by the goals we're most committed to. So I'm right now writing my 3rd book with Dan. It's called 10X is Easier Than 2X. And so I'll briefly explain it just because it's really relevant to this. So 10X is a big idea. It's common. It's a common idea, but Dan's been teaching this for 30 years, and he looks at it very differently. So 10X is usually looked at as the end. It's usually the target. I want to go from making 100,000 to 1 million, right? And it's also usually looked at purely quantitatively, in numbers. But usually the 10X is actually qualitative. It's a transformation. You're a different person, and you had to have become a different person to make that quantitative jump. So I look at 10X as being able to do something fundamentally different from what you could do before. So a child going from crawling to walking is a qualitative jump. They are now doing things their past self couldn't do. I was just barely with my family, and my younger brother is supposed to live with my dad. So going from living with your parents to living on your own is a massive 10x jump. Like it's a qualitative jump. You're now operating differently than you were before, and you had to learn skills and take on responsibility that you didn't have before. Well, one of the things we talk about in the book, we kind of use the 80-20 principle, that if you want to go for 2x, which is pretty much just like linear marginal growth, you can keep 80% of your existing self. You only have to change 20%. So listen to this. So like if you want to go for 2x, you don't have to change very much. It's really just dragging the past into the future. It's doing more of what you're doing. It's not very inspiring. It doesn't require change. It's often actually the avoidance of change. And it's more linear. Whereas if you want to go 10x and you want to make a massive transformation, looking at it more qualitatively, that you transform and become fundamentally different and you can do different things than your past self could do, you can only keep the best 20% of what you're currently doing. Actually, 80% of your current life is a radical distraction from 10x. 80% wouldn't scale. 80% of your current clients, 80% of your current business, 80% of your current habits, all of that is what got you here, and it's what you love. Actually, I was just listening to this interesting interview from Jordan Peterson, and he talked about how he says commitment and sacrifice are the exact same thing, but in order to commit to something, you have to sacrifice almost everything else for it. But how I look at it is, and he talked about how the thing you must sacrifice is the thing you actually love most right now. Let me be clear.
Yeah, I know what you're vibing. Yeah.
Let me give an example. So I'm talking about the 80% of things that are, if you're thinking about it just in terms of a business, like there's 80% of things right now going on that aren't going to go to 10x. And so you have to identify what are the one or two things. This is actually one of the really beautiful reasons about making a vision very big, is that the bigger you make it, the more honest you have to be that most of the things aren't going to get you there. If you actually have a small vision, like maybe I want to grow by 10%, there's like literally 1,000 options you could do to grow.
Yep.
And so it creates complexity. Whereas if you go really high and you think really big, it forces simplicity that almost nothing will work. Almost everything I'm doing won't get me there. I'm juggling like 10 different things. Maybe the best one. Maybe if I, in my case as a writer, maybe I really need to spend a lot more time thinking, and like I need to write 10 times better books. Like, you have to be really honest that like there's only a few things that would get you to 10x, and almost everything that is here right now won't get you there. The only reason I bring that up is that anyone who's made a big jump in their life, call it, started a business or like got in really good shape, they made a big jump and they had to give up a lot of their past self, even a lot of the things they loved. Maybe they freaking loved certain really unhealthy things.
Yeah.
And so you have to let go of some of those things you love most, because those are the things tied to the current identity, not the future self.
Right.
And my Aunt Jane, who runs an herbal company out of Salt Lake City, she was like diving into entrepreneurship, and she became aware of Dan Sullivan. Dan Sullivan, the founder of Strategic Coach, he's like almost 80. He's been around for like 45 years teaching entrepreneurs. He's like this legend in that field. I had no clue who he was. I was just starting school, like it's just very into personal development, stuff like that. But she would start sending me these little quote books by Dan Sullivan, and I'd flip through them, and I was just like in love with these ideas. And that's when I started blogging, and so I was integrating a lot of his thinking. But anyways, fast forward, we end up getting to know each other. We write a book called Who Not How. But to be fully honest with you, the reason I wrote the first book with Dan, which was the right book to write, was because I really wanted to write The Gap in the Gain.
Yeah.
Seriously. And so he has all these little books, and I just started thumbing through all of them, and I came across this little book called The Gap in the Gain, and I read it all, and I wrote blog posts about it because I loved it. It's a really simple book. His books are very simple. But basically the main idea, and there's so many implications, and so we'll go into those, whatever direction you want, whatever you liked. But the main idea is that we all have ideals. We all have that future self. We all have where we want to be. But especially as a high achiever, and I know that you said a lot of your people are massive high achievers, if you're always measuring yourself against your ideal, measuring your current self against your ideal, you're always in the gap. And you can do this about anything. So like this is where Dan really discovered it, is because he's always training high-level entrepreneurs. They'd get together and he'd say, tell me about the last 90 days. And the entrepreneur starts rattling off all these things that happened. And they say, yeah, but honestly, it could have been way better because I could have done this. I could have done that. I could have done this. And so they've just shared their progress, but then they immediately devalue it. Like literally, they just basically make it worth nothing because they said, I should have been here, or we could have done this. And so that's the gap, is where you're measuring yourself or your situation against where it ideally should be in your mind. And this is, in my opinion, where trauma is that if you have a trauma, it means you're measuring your past against what you thought it should have been. where you thought you should be and how it should have gone.
Woo,
and you know what I mean?
Good.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
that's
you're
really good.
Yeah, you're still looking at your past in the gap where you're like, it should have gone this way, or I could have been this much farther, blah, blah, blah. You've got this story about the past and you've put it in the gap where it's not up to the ideal that you have. And how Dan explains it is that ideals are like the horizon in the desert. Like, it gives direction. Ideals are amazing. It's good to have a vision. It's good to have goals. It's good to have your future self. And it provides direction. It does not matter how many steps or how fast you're running towards that horizon. It's going to keep going. And so if you compare your current self now to that moving horizon and think you should be there, you're always going to be in the gap. Like, you're always going to feel like a failure. And this is why often high achievers are depressed or they are unhappy, is because they're always measuring themselves against the next ideal, which is that moving target. And then they're always devaluing everything that they've done. They're never feeling good. They never feel successful.
I had a summer, I was at law school in England and I quit after I was in the United States, and I had this eureka moment. What would you do if you could do anything? And as I'm answering that question, I realized it isn't law school. If I could do anything, it wouldn't be doing what I was doing. So it was a key trade-off moment, strategic trade-off, killed the one, didn't go back to law school, went back to England, decided, okay, I'm going to apply, to go to university in America and get back here, applied to BYU, 6 months late, didn't, no way I was going to get in, but then one thing after another happened and I did get in. But while I was waiting for that decision to be made, there was a summer, and that summer I just spent entirely reading. Like, I'm really serious, 16 hours a day for probably 2.5 months. I was just completely submersed in wisdom literature, and just, it was like a layering experience, because normally you read half an hour a day, or an hour a day, or a couple of hours, or one day, even if you're studying at university, you're doing a few hours maybe each day. This was a unique, even now, a totally unique experience. There was no distraction. There was nothing else. I wasn't married. I had no children. It was just consumed with a layer after layer of this thinking. And it completely rewired me in a way that was it was totally life-changing. I came out of that with a sense of mission, a sense of identity, clearer identity, who I was and what I needed to do with my life. A person who can turn a negative into a positive can never be defeated. And so it's funny how we've come to absorb that term. Well, I know it sounds Pollyannish, and that's almost the only way we use that term now. But actually, it's so dynamic and powerful and causative. And this is, if I could choose any ability for myself, it would be this one. And I think there are a few principles that I've come across in my research over the last, now 20 years, that I think have relevancy for how to do this. We had a situation come up probably a year and a half-ish ago now. And here's the situation. So we move house. We move into a really lovely environment, like a place that was built in the 1950s. It's white picket fences down the streets. There's no street lamps. There's more horseways than roadways. It is really like a sort of quite a picturesque place. And we're just so delighted to be there. Our children are happy. And one of our children, Eve, is especially thriving in the environment. She's out chasing lizards all over the place and then letting them go and up trees, and she's just delightful. She's reading James Herriot, all of his books, and just always voluminous in the way that she speaks about things, all of this. Then she turns 14. And as she turns 14, she starts taking longer to do her chores, talking less. And so we just sort of say, well, she seems a little awkward in certain things. We go, look, it's pretty age appropriate. Okay. And then she has a checkup with a physical therapist who does a test, and she fails a basic test. And he pulls my wife aside and said, look, I think you should just go see a neurologist just to be sure. This is odd that this would happen. Well, you don't have to be warned twice when you hear something like that, right? And so we went immediately, it was the same day if I remember, but just immediately to see a neurologist and began a process, because seeing it through that lens, all of this change in behavior suddenly seemed really different to us. And not only did we see it differently, the decline afterwards, the next month or two, was a free fall decline in capabilities. Like almost like you take somebody and you just put them in slow motion, just like, so that it took her like 2 minutes to write her own name, that kind of thing. Like, this is the stuff that suffering can be made of. You do not know what's going on. They cannot, these neurologists cannot even offer the beginning of a diagnosis. And so we faced one of the most important test moments, decision moments of our family life. And we realized you can either choose to sort of focus on what's not going right, what you don't have control over, which pulls you into a whole spiral, right? I mean, that's of course it's more negative, but it's also less empowered. It's all of those things. That's one option. Or you have a different choice, which is focus on what is going right, be grateful about what anything you can be, in fact, and lean into it. And we realized quite quickly that that's the only viable option. Yeah. And so we chose it, fully. And so what does that look like? Well, it means you're thankful for music and you go and sing around the piano together. It means you're thankful for nature and you go out and have walks in nature. And so in the midst of certainly what could have been the worst thing ever, we experienced, and I don't use this word lightly, joy. And that was such a game changer to realize that even in life's crucibles, life can be really good.
Yeah.
And it was like magic. It was like magic what happened. It's quickly. There was like this positivity bred, more positivity, bred, greater faith, greater hope, a sense that the future was bright, things were going, this is going to be okay. Don't worry about all the things you can't control. Have joy in this moment. And it multiplied. And great things happened too. Friends called, the word went out and suddenly there's this legion of people sending positive feeling and actually praying, and we could feel that sustaining sense and a sense that all would be well. A neurologist who had a 9-month waiting list. He is a specialist in movement disorders for pediatrics, which I'm just saying, like, those three make it an absurd level of speciality. Like, almost nobody knows that. So that's why he has a 9-month waiting list. He suddenly is available. He comes in. But even when he came, he's like 2 hours late for us in that appointment. I start thinking, maybe feeling like complaining. And I did complain. My wife said, no, I'm thankful even for this, because, and as she says it, she can have the insight. If he's late for us, it means he's with somebody else caring about them. When he comes to us, he'll be caring about Eve. It's going to be okay. And when he did, that's exactly what it is. He brought a whole team with him, and he took a completely different approach to what was going on. And we spent hours with him that day and his team, and they had an insight, one key tiny insight in their approach that helped us to get her immediately hospitalized and so on. And I'll tell you, it didn't just stop there. There were, in the week after she came home from the hospital, she's throwing up. She's still sick. We don't know why that's happening. Then there's a mass shooting next to one of our daughters, close to where our daughter goes to school. The next day after the mass shooting, we have emergency evacuations because of the fires, the fires that were happening in the Calabasas area where we live. It sounds very, very first world problem here, but we have this idea we should go to Disneyland. That's where we should go. We're going to get out of here. We're going to do something. We might as well go do it. So we go to Disneyland, and we some friends of ours have the same idea. They're there, and we bump. So they let us know they're coming. So we end up in the same hotel with them. And then while we're in the hotel with that extended family, my friend, his brother, who's there staying in the same hotel, dies. This is all within 1 week of her being hospitalized. So I'm just trying to describe what I think the military would call a VUCA environment, right? Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. It's like, what are the principles that are essential in this environment? And what I learned was this simple lesson. Here's what I learned. When we focus on what we lack, we lose what we have.
Yeah.
But when we focus on what we have, we gain what we lack. That's what I learned. That family that we were with in the hotel, we became bonded with, socially bonded, and still are to this day. Eve has recovered immensely. It's an ongoing process. It's not all resolved, but we absolutely believe she will be completely healed. Meanwhile, the culture that was created, the asset that was built in our family is actually different, right? Like it builds. I didn't have language for it at the time, but there's research to explain what was happening to us, and I can get to that if you're interested. We had this reserve built into our culture. And now with Corona coming along, two things I noticed. One is the culture's all there. So it has this resiliency that is so surprising. There's just genuine joy and happiness in the family. It's like, it's totally fine. And the reason I say all of this is because I think this can all be useful for any person going through this right now. This is the opportunity of a lifetime to build new capabilities and reserves that can help us thrive in whatever future challenge inevitably come along. The harder part of becoming an essentialist, I think, is realizing how non-essentialist our current thinking is, the outside culture, and also just our internal paradigm is so non-essentialist, because this is the basic premise of non-essentialism is that everything is approximately of equal value. I just have to do it all. I have to do everything. So you're trying to do everything, but and you feel overwhelmed from the second you wake up in the morning, and you know that feeling when it all rushes at you. C.S. Lewis described that as like rushing at you like wild animals, just coming at you. And so that's all the burden, the overwhelm. Oh, there's so much to do. And in that moment, it's like you have to push it off and say, no, it's not all of equal value. It's not. I got to push that back, all that noise, all those voices, so that I can hear that other voice, that quieter voice, that sense of internal direction that in my own life seems to know intuitively that only a few things really matter today. And those few things, if I do them, are so disproportionately valuable, they will change everything else. They are game-changing things, especially if I do this habitually, over years. Push off all that non-essential noise, all that stuff that's coming at you. What really matters? And so I think that in that little moment, multiply that through years. That's what my wife and I have always been about. That was one of the unique things that drew us to each other in the beginning, was a dual conviction that to discern and follow that voice of conscience was so much more valuable than doing 100 other things. In fact, we see it that I would even describe it as it's a mindset, but it's also a skill set. That skill set is like basically the essential job of parenting, because what we want is to inculcate that way of making decisions into our children, or at least remove all the obstacles, all the non-essential voices and junk and noise, so that they can start to hear it themselves and then be led by it. Because if you do that, then the job of parenting is done. Our job of guidance and nurturing and leading, the leading is coming from within now. They're leading, they're guiding, they're able to make decisions. They can become essentialists in their own right. And so to us, that's the core, the very essence of essentialism is really that. And so our highest priority in life, both as parents, but also as individuals, everybody listening to this, the highest priority is to protect the ability to prioritize, meaning to protect, nurture, educate that voice of conscience so that it can be the guiding force rather than just what everybody else is doing and a fear of missing out and all the noise on social media and all the latest headlines in news and all of that, those voices. You get to push all of that out and be led by something different.
The Rachel Hollis podcast is produced by me, Rachel Hollis. It's edited by Andrew Weller and Jack Noble. There's a revolutionary bra brand so confident it will change your life, they let you wear it risk-free for 60 days. Evelyn and Bobby is changing the game with their patented wireless replacement designed to support, smooth, and flatter an inclusive range of bodies up to a K-cup. Wear it, wash it, put it to the test. If it's not the most comfortable, supportive, and flattering bra you've ever worn, you'll get your money back. No questions asked. Go to evelynbobby.com/Rachel for $20 off your first bra.